Rags, Hero Dog of World War I, a true story, written by Margaret Peace Raven and illustrated by Petra Brown. Many, many years ago, during World War I, there lived a real dog who began life in an alleyway of a Paris cafe. The dog was a shaggy mutt, a small, scrappy gutter pup who belonged to no one but the streets where he roamed. He didn't even have a name except for the angry ones cafe owners yelled to chase him from their garbage. The stray lived by his wits alone, for he hadn't a friend in the world since the day he was born. Then one July evening, sirens blared. They warned the people of Paris to shutter windows and black out lamps so they wouldn't be seen by enemy planes. Danger filled the streets, so the dog took shelter in an empty doorway just as the night turned dark as a pocket. The mutt didn't know his life was about to change when an American soldier stumbled in the inky blackness and yipe! Stepped on his paw. The soldier lit a match and saw a scraggly face with two worried eyes staring at him. "Did I hurt you, pal?" asked Private James Donovan. He'd come with the U.S. Army's Fightin' First Division to help France in the war. Donovan picked up the mutt. The dog had never been held before, and he liked the feeling until a stern military policeman appeared. "Your pass," the policeman demanded of Donovan. "Sure hope you're a good-luck pup," Donovan whispered to the dog, because he didn't have a pass that allowed him to be out in the city at night. He had marched in a big Paris parade that day with an American battalion. Instead of returning to base, Donovan had stayed in Paris to sightsee. Now he was in trouble. "Sir, this dog is our division mascot. I ran off base to find him when he went missing. Our unit pulls out tomorrow, and our commander wouldn't be happy to leave this little guy behind." Donovan quickly made up a tale taller than the Eiffel Tower. "Dog? He looks like dirty rags to me," scowled the military policeman. "Yes, sir," Donovan agreed. "That's exactly how he got his name. First Division Rags. Quite the pup he is." The policeman nodded. The name sure fit. He decided to let them go. Back at the army base, Rags sat still and straight by Donovan's side in front of the commander. A surprised Private Donovan learned that instead of being in trouble, he'd gotten a new rank and assignment that very day. "Pack up, Sergeant. Tonight you move out for the battlefield," the commander told him. "Rags too, sir?" hoped Donovan. "Rags too," the commander agreed. "He seems a smart fellow." Rags and Donovan rumbled out of Paris in a motor truck. "Good old Rags," Donovan said, scratching the dog's head. "We're in this war together now." Rags curled up by his side. Rags stayed close to the soldier. Even when Donovan tried to keep him from the battlefront, Rags jumped out a window at the division headquarters and followed him in secret. Back at camp, Donovan felt a wet nose nudge him. It was Rags. From that day on, he was Donovan's dog through thick and thin. Rags liked infantry work, especially sharing Donovan's food rations and drinking water from his helmet. Rags found many important jobs to do. He chased mice and rats out of the field trenches where the soldiers slept and ate. His ears heard the buzz of incoming shells before the soldiers did. When Rags fell bellied to dirt, the soldiers did too. Rags loved rolling in the dirt. It made his shaggy eyebrows look like fuzzy caterpillars to Donovan. Rags even learned to salute. He'd raise a paw to his face, then drop it as a smart show of respect. Once a general walked by. Rags stopped, squatted, and raised a paw. The general respectfully returned his paw. Donovan was a signalman. He laid telephone wires on the ground so soldiers at the battlefront could communicate with soldiers in the rear, the ones with the biggest guns. Rags's nose read Donovan's wires like a book, and he helped him to find breaks in the lines. Rags worked as a runner, too. Donovan would put a piece of paper under Rags's collar, turn him to face the rear, and say, "Go find!" Then Rags ran toward the sound of the big guns and waited there until someone came to take his message. It was his most dangerous job. Donovan made Rags a little gas mask to protect him from the enemy's poisonous gas. Rags hated it. It blocked his nose. He couldn't smell. He'd push it off with his paws, but Donovan would put it right back on. "We don't want you going west on us, pal," he'd say in the way soldiers spoke of dying. Rags didn't understand Donovan, but his voice calmed him like a nap in the sun. So he'd keep the mask on. By the late September of 1918, news about the hero mascot had spread throughout the 1st Division. Soldiers told how Rags had bitten the enemy's leg to defend Donovan, how he'd crawled under barbed wire to run messages, and how he never gave up. Not for a minute, no matter how much the sky exploded. He became a legend of courage, a giant of a dog. Then one day, October 9th, 1918, a major battle began in the Argonne forest. Fog was so thick, Donovan couldn't see his lines. The air was choked with poison. Men were trapped. Donovan tightened their gas mask and tied a message on Rags. It told the rear soldiers where to fire to help the men. Donovan's mouth was tight with worry as he gave Rags the command, "Go find." Rags began to run back when a big blast hit nearby. It sprayed metal like hard rain over Rags. It cut his paw, his ear, his eye. It threw Donovan to the ground, tore off his mask. Rags's mask was gone, too. He licked Donovan's face. Donovan struggled to his feet. They moved together, Donovan and Rags, limping, staggering toward the rear. Another shell hit. It flipped Rags to the ground. A soldier found him and the message he carried. Wounded Donovan was taken to a field hospital. "Rags!" he gasped as he awoke to find his dog beside him. Then loudly the big guns began to fire. Crash! Boom! Blasted the shells from the rear to rescue the trapped men. Rags turned his face up to Donovan at the good sound. He knew. "You did it, pal!" Donovan's smile broke wide over Rags. "You saved them." In the field hospital, a doctor found Rags under Donovan's blanket. He took a shell splinter from Rags' eye, sewed up his ear and foot. One ear was deaf, one eye blind. He'd limp. But Rags was alive and still with his Donovan. Donovan's friend hid Rags under his coat to board the dog on a hospital ship, taking Donovan to America. Base hospital staff in Chicago cared for Donovan. Rags had healed. He lived in the firehouse on base. Rags made a bed for himself under the hose cart, but spent each day with Donovan. He'd sit outside the main hospital door in the morning and wait for someone to let him in. Then he lay on Donovan's bed, being a good medicine, until he had to leave at dusk. One day in the hospital, Donovan wrapped his arms around Rags. Good old Rags. He nuzzled against his neck. Rags sensed Donovan put a "Go find" message under his collar with the hug. But no paper was there. Donovan grew weak from coughing that day, so Rags licked his hand. The following morning, Rags was frantic when he couldn't find Donovan. He searched the ward bed by bed. Exhausted with worry, he went to the front door, paced. A medical officer knew Donovan was in critical care, a place for very ill soldiers. "I will get you to him tomorrow, I promise," he told Rags. Rags left the hospital. no tail wagged, and Donovan died in the night. The next day, the medical officer took Rags to Donovan's empty bed. "The pup needs to learn in his own way," he'd convinced the hospital staff. Rags lay down where Donovan wasn't anymore. His nose read the story of Donovan's last day. Donovan's lungs were tired. He was cold. He had gone west for a nap in the sun. Rags stayed on the bed for a long time that day. Then he climbed off. He walked the hallway to the front door for the last time and waited for the medical officer to open it. Then he wagged his thanks. Then Rags walked slowly to the firehouse. It is told that Rags never went near the hospital again. He knew Donovan wasn't there. His best friend now lived in his heart.